There is a popular writing adage that says, write what you know. After a self inflicted suffering through 3 seasons of Amazon's The Wheel of Time, I can now confidently say that the showrunners and writers are absolutely writing what they know. They are taking the lived experiences of their own multicultural, progressive, subjective morality worldview and infusing it into their, and I use this term loosely, artistic output. The result of this is a failure of a show that has no dramatic tension because it has nothing real to root for. Now, I am going to put an important caveat here. I have not actually read the Wheel of Time books, although it's on my shortlist. Pun intended there, since the series is 15 books long. So my analysis is purely what I've seen in the show. Why watch a show that I consider to be so terrible, you might ask? Well, unfortunately, there's a shortage of quality content these days when there isn't a new Taylor Sheridan series premiering, and I can only subject my wife to so many rewatches of HBO's Rome or Battlestar Galactica. Let's start with what is probably the foundational flaw. The show, as far as I can remember, has not explicitly provided a moral framework of what the fundamental differences are between the light and the dark. Sure, everyone always says, light protect you, or talks about fighting against the shadow, but no one has ever explained why one is morally bad and the other good. There are associated implications of the Dark One wanting to control the world. But, in practice, what impact does that actually have on a macro level for the lives of the people who already exist in the world? Insofar as what has been seen in the show, there is no liberal democracy of any sort, so the lives of the world's inhabitants are still subject to the control and whims of kings and queens, not of their choosing. It's a might makes right world, in which cruelty, selfishness, and all the flaws of humanity are commonplace. So what makes the Dark One pushing his own claim morally different in any way? Another idea that is pushed is that the Dark One may want to break or destroy the world. On the surface, that sounds quite ominous. Yet the show purports that people are constantly reborn into the world to live out similar experiences over and over. Given that the world is a life that, as Hobbes would say, is ugly, brutish, and short, it could be argued that this could in fact be a mercy, rather than constantly subjecting people to repeated pain. Further, with no way to end the spinning and recycling of experiences, there doesn't truly exist free will. If we take all of that together, one could almost make a case that this latter goal would actually be morally justified to prevent this endless suffering. In the show, Ishamael almost makes this point when he is killed permanently by Rand. All of this is to say that since the show doesn't provide any moral framework of right versus wrong, we are reduced to what is essentially a binary friend-enemy distinction. You play for the other team, then I hate you, and there is no act so heinous that I can't visit upon you. We see this constantly in the response anytime someone is revealed to be a dark friend. They are instantly ostracized and attacked by those playing for the light, regardless of anything they had done before or their reasons for doing so. However, if you manage to survive long enough like Min does, and then say you want to trade teams for the light, then everything is forgiven. At least for her, because she's a main character. No one else apparently ever gets that chance at redemption. This brings up another dissonance. Setting the Dark Friends aside, the other main servants of the Dark One seem to be Trollocs and Fades. Never mind the fact that Fades apparently must have all died between season 2 and 3. The way they and the Trollocs are depicted in the show is to act in a fairly animalistic manner. They don't ever seem to be creatures with any sort of free will to make a decision between right and wrong. This means that Fades and Trollocs aren't necessarily evil, just animals acting according to their nature.
You don't think nature can be evil?
Was Line evil because it rips a gazelle to shreds?
This concept is explicitly stated by a character during the battle for the Two Rivers, when they are confused that the Trollocs are using tactics and armor. To be fair, and spoiler warning, it's revealed that they're actually being controlled by Padden Fane, so the point about them not having true free will still stands. Now, I'm not going to die on the hill that the servants of the Dark One are actually some sort of force for good. Far from. It's more the broader concept that neither side actually represents any objective good. In fact, Padden Fane actually proves the earlier point of this team or that team by saying he doesn't hate Perrin and the Two Rivers at all. He was just told to take it for the Dark One.
Why did you do this to us? Why do you hate us?
Hate you? I don't care about you.
I don't care about this place.
In theory, having forces and characters along a spectrum on either side of a objective good and bad morality system can be interesting. I assume that's present in the actual Wheel of Time books, based on the hints the series leaves about the White Cloaks, as well as the Aes Sedai. With the latter, it seems like the show tries to whitewash them in its promotion of strong, powerful women. The reality is they generally act like a group of catty women who act selfishly and to protect their own interests under the supposed mandate of protecting the world and the overpowered nature of their abilities. It's as if the Real Housewives suddenly had world-bending powers. Even a celebrated series, like Game of Thrones, suffered from this lack of objective morality to an extent. Although, at least they had an understandable and explained in-world morality. Further, it actually leaned into the concepts of asking, where does morality stem from? Even if it landed in later seasons on a might makes right note. In the Wheel of Time, things get even worse. Without a true good and evil to fight for, then at least you'd have other things to motivate you, such as country, honor, and family, right?
Wrong.
Those concepts mean nothing to the writers, and therefore, they don't lend them any credence in the show. No character ever expresses any sort of national pride. The exception perhaps being of the royalty of Andor, but let's be real, they run the place, so that's in their interest. Even local pride of wanting to defend your farms and homes is missing. This is seen again in the Battle of the Two Rivers, when initially, the entire village basically just wants to flee or stand there defenseless while they get cut down. At least until Perrin gives a so-called motivational speech. It's almost as if you can hear the writers speaking directly through the villagers. Well, we're not soldiers, that's someone else's job. We'll just flee somewhere else since we're all just global citizens and geography means nothing. Again, color me unsurprised. It's the left-wing premise that borders mean nothing, nations are a relic of the past, and all the other beliefs that have led to an epidemic of main character syndrome. It's also the philosophy that has led to 70% of leftists saying they would flee the country if it were invaded rather than stay and fight. You could call it an artistic manifestation of the mentality that I owe no loyalty to my country or my home. I'm just a temporary resident here. The area is getting invaded, well then either some other secondary character who is not me should fight, or I'll just flee somewhere else where I can hide behind the courage of others. I will allow that the Wheel of Time does show characters caring about others, at least as far as it extends to their family. This is not some sort of high bar to clear, though. It's the most basic of biological drives that anyone can empathize with, as long as you aren't a sociopath. Lastly, honor doesn't exist in the show. Honor requires some sort of moral code, which we've established the show doesn't have, or some sort of strong national or tribal system of values, which doesn't seem to exist either. The exception being the Aiel, although it seems their code boils down to whatever the male characters are doing is wrong. What, then, are the characters left to fight for, other than perhaps love? There is certainly plenty of intimacy on the show. I wouldn't consider myself a prude, but it does seem as if Wheel of Time looked at the number of people banging in Game of Thrones and said, "Hold my beer." The problem is that sex doesn't correlate to love. Frankly, even though it definitely has a physical component, the most believable relationship in the show is between Lanfear and Rand, because it actually seems to transcend the bounds of the physical. The show also seems obsessed with making various characters hook up with each other. Again, I can only guess this is because of the lives lived by the show's writers. In fact, I believe there is even a direct quote from the showrunner about introducing more polyamory into the original material. This creates a problem when characters are just constantly having sex with each other. It interferes with other relationships and regular friendships developing. From what I have seen commented by book readers, they have turned quite a number of strong friendships between characters from the books into romances, and even changed the sexual orientation of said characters to accommodate. I have opinions on this, but I'll instead defer to a competent writer, C.S. Lewis, to explain, who said, "Those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend." This sentiment seems to be clear throughout the writing of the Wheel of Time. I can only guess this is an extension of the writer's lived experiences. With no value system, there can be no shared values to build a real friendship or even romantic relationship on. Since our writers don't have any greater meaning in their own lives, beyond hopping from one indulgent pleasure to the next. This reflects in our characters. It's an outlook that leads to characters who are being viciously hunted and needing to be discreet, drinking like frat bros in a bar in Tar-Valon. Additionally, when they should be focused on a quest to save the world, they're partying like college co-eds in Tanchico. I wish it stopped there, but it gets worse.
Malcolm, but I think things are a little bit different than you and I had feared.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot worse.
In Season 3, the showrunners take this self-gratification to a new level. Learning that Elaine's actress has an okay singing voice, they literally created a whole song number scene for her to have. It's a choice that reflects their warped value system. Adapting a series of the scope of Wheel of Time, while juggling numerous storylines in the compressed timeline of a few short seasons, is already difficult. Regardless, they decided to give themselves an indulgence that doesn't serve the characters, the story, and is also disrespectful to the work they are adapting. And of course, the song itself is about lust, hedonism, and sex. I have a theory about how this has all managed to unfold, and it's further reflected with the writing of the show itself. There are no consequences for actions taken, either by the characters themselves or the showrunners. Now, I know there are rumors of a pending cancellation, but the fact that they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on 3 seasons of this is enough. In all fairness, any fictional work has always suffered from so-called plot armor, where nothing really bad happens to the characters. Wheel of Time, though, has taken this to such an exponential degree that it can only be considered the equivalent of reductio ad absurdum. Characters are given life-threatening injuries countless times by attackers who should be delivering killing blows, and then rapidly healed back to life. It has removed any sense of weight to the action sequences. Again, I'm unsurprised. The writers live in a consequence-free world, so that's what they think everyone's experience is like. If you have the right identity boxes, you can't be fired. Taking on too much debt? Don't worry, it's not your responsibility, it's all forgiven. Reach the pinnacle, or the bottom as it were, of the victim industrial complex, then you can do no wrong. This denial about fundamental realities leads to other farcical manifestations. Sometimes, I'm not clear if some of it is just bad writing or the left's penchant for revisionist history, as actions and events that occurred in previous episodes or seasons are retconned or outright ignored. Is it malice or incompetence? There's literally a scene in which Rand has a vision of all his bloodline going back thousands of years, one of whom is gay. But if your truth is that 2 gay men can create a biological child in a world that doesn't have IVF or surrogacy, then I guess it works. This extends to one of Hollywood's favorite assertions, that men and women are physically equal, especially when it comes to combat. I guess, given the previously discussed example of denying biological realities, that I shouldn't be shocked at this, especially after all this time. I can only conclude that the writers have either never been in a fight, or, more sympathetically, that they're men who have been beaten up at some point by a woman. That's not to say that there aren't capable women fighters, especially with the tools of the modern world. But in a physical contest between 2 equally trained individuals, a man will beat a woman every time. Now, the problems with this show are multiple. Other creators have done a great job diving into the flaws related to the male character's lack of agency and effeminization, or that the women are all girl bosses who can do no wrong. Further exemplifying the writer's lived experience is the fact that very few of these characters seem to be straight, which is interesting given that only around 8% of the US population identifies as LGBT. They are basically writing their social circle. My favorite, though, is the unbelievable ethnic diversity in supposedly far-flung communities that have lived in relative isolation for hundreds of years. Even within the same village, people have different accents, to the incredible absurd point that 2 characters, who are ostensibly teenage brothers, have different accents. If the show does have one message that it seems to be trying to promote, it's that of pacifism. This is demonstrated time and again by Wheel of Time's focus on the show's Amish equivalent and their belief in nonviolence. However, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view, their lack of creative ability actually leads to numerous scenes showing how such a philosophy is fundamentally unrealistic, in either their Hobbesian world or ours.
The women of this country learned long ago. Those without swords can still die upon them.
The Wheel of Time has none of that, though. It's for the reasons we laid out previously. The characters have no fears or desires beyond what their next immediate pleasure is, and therefore, there is no terrible choice between their two most important drives. Whether it's a defined opposing morality winning, a country, home, or value system to fight for, or even having to choose between duty and honor or love. With none of these things to fight for, said fights become meaningless, even before we account for the cheat code mode of the characters. Sure, we cheer for the point of view characters, like we do our home team, but we're not invested. Honestly, the most interesting character who actually has a rending conflict seems to be Lanfear. In the end, the show believes in nothing. It's just a sequence of characters being pushed through a world, making decisions in service of their short-term physical lusts. There's no broader examination of the source and application of power, a la Game of Thrones, nor is it an exercise in showing the spectrum between good and evil. That's because the writers think good and evil are subjective. At this point, I'm honestly rooting for the Dark One to actually break the Wheel of Time, so this will all stop.
It's gone. It's done. It's over now.
Thank you for listening and honoring me with your time. Please like, subscribe, and sign up for alerts if you want to see more content like this.
You're just in time to do the thing you should have done a long, long time ago. Bow to me!